So bad. I would sit here.
No, you can come up here.
All right, so the science behind cooking vegetables, especially green vegetables, are it's pretty simple. There's some rules to it. It's been coined by Thomas Keller as the big pot cookery, right? He kind of wrote about it in one of his books, and it's been kind of adopted as the vegetable science law, you know, because he's right. So big pot cookery, when you're cooking vegetables, you need a big pot of water, right? Some of the rules are large amount of water, small amount of veg, all right, boiling every time, salted like the sea, and then we need blanch, we need ice. Mind getting ice. Here. Thank you. You know where it's at?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then blanch it to cool it down, right? This will give you the greenest vegetables possible, right? And the idea is to have a well-cooked, very bright, colorful vegetable, right? Now this changes depending on the cultures that you cook for, right? Across the board, generally in the industry, we cook vegetables to a bright green, al dente texture, right? That being said, if you're in a banquet arena and you have an all African American group, you do not want to do that because they will complain. They want, and I'm generally speaking because it's the truth, but this doesn't mean everybody's that way. It just means that as a whole, generally, this is what happens. An African American group wants their green vegetables mushy and brown, or army green. And you're one of the exceptions, you know.
Not too much,
it's
but
not
not too
everybody.
hard.
And there's just like,
I do too.
well,
Green with the
then
crunch.
y'all are a bit of the exception. Just like, you know, there's Anglos, you know, there's white folks that like mushy brown green bean stew, you know, or they grew up eating that way or whatever. But generally speaking, as a banquet chef, you need to know what the masses eat, right? The things that I found with your African American groups is they like a lot of sauce, they eat a lot of bread. No, they eat a lot of sauce, they eat a lot of bread, they like the vegetables mushy and green, brown, and they don't like rare meat.
Yeah, that I don't like.
I love
My meat well done.
Yeah.
Almost
So, and you can call it what you want to call it, but that's the bottom line. That is through the scientific approach of experience, time after time after time again, this rang true, right? On a all white group or majority white group, I'd go through 1.5 rolls per person. On an all African or majority African group, I'd go through 2, 3.5 on average per person. No, they like what they like, and one of them is bread. They love bread, so they eat a lot of it. You know, the white folks they're like, oh, I don't eat starch. You know, give me a lean white chicken breast, and the African American like, give me that size. And,
We'll take what
you know, we don't want the white chicken breast.
I don't either.
Yeah, that's. I'm one of the white folks. I like dark meat.
I
Yeah.
enjoy weddings. I can't stand that
White meat
wedding.
is
Love
like
dark meat.
drier.
Not
It's
as
dry,
right.
yeah.
Right.
It's not as fatty. I like dark meat myself, but
Ain't no limits with me. Dark, give me white, I'll take them both.
sauce. I did 1.5 white folks, 2.5 ounce per plate African American. Meats were mid-rare to medium for white folks, mid-well, juicy but not red for African American. And trust me, I played with that and I was like, that'll be fine. I did like a mid, sent it out.
Baby, this meat is pink.
It was like one after the other, just refire for like 200 people. It was a horrible night. I was just like, what's wrong with these people?
We're still moving.
Yeah, that's what they thought. So, being a chef is understanding what cultures eat, right? For example, it's not a race thing. It has nothing to do. I'm not a racial person at all, but I do. It is somewhat of a form of racial profiling because you have to.
Yeah, you do.
It's cultural profiling is what it is. It's understanding what those cultures eat. Just like the Japanese, they, in generally speaking, the Oriental cultures don't eat a lot of dairy because they are across the board lactose intolerant. Generally, they just are. It's genetically whatever. I don't know. Same with African Americans. African Americans tend to be a little bit more on the lactose intolerant side. African Americans tend to be a little bit higher on the high blood pressure side.
Oh yeah.
Diabetes side. So, feeding them a lot of food with with salty items can be a little risque because they'll be like, I can't eat this, Feeding a Japanese person dairy, hey, here's a cheese platter for your third course, They're gonna be like, didn't you get the memo? We don't eat dairy, And they'll probably be polite enough not to eat it, unlike the African Americans.
We gonna eat it and talk about
That's
it
another
later.
thing. Yeah, African American groups. You will not until they're out the door. You won't stop hearing about it.
Get a big
They
mouth.
talk, and they talk loud, and they make sure
Yeah.
that they're heard.
Well, no, round meat.
I've spent years doing this, and I know what groups do what. White folks, they talk, but they do it more in a.
It's like it's a secret.
It's a secret.
Yeah.
They'll
They won't let you
passive
know.
aggressive. Yeah.
This, but I'm gonna tell you what this
Yeah,
is.
but they'll tell all Frisco how bad it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Online.
Behind the door. Yeah, online or behind the door.
Yeah.
They take you down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've never lived near you, but I always talk about it.
We'll talk about it, but we'll be like,
Yeah.
let's go over and
You
share
made it.
fresh next week.
That's the thing. Yeah. If
Like, you
make it
remember me,
better-
right? I like my meat well done.
And if you make it better, that you definitely know there's a problem and you can fix it.
Yeah.
And sometimes having a problem that's fixed is better than not having a problem at all. So yeah, there's something to be said about that because if you don't know about the problem, which could be the case, if they don't voice it, then you won't know there was a problem. So there's a little bit of obviously Indians don't eat beef. That's more religious. Your Jewish cultures don't obviously eat pork, right? And they don't eat meat with the mother's milk, right? That's a big no-no. All right, and all their meat has to be slaughtered in halal method, right? So there's a lot of lot of stuff that you really need to know, and that's not even touching base on like the dietary issues, diabetics, people that are allergic to gluten, or allergic to dairy or eggs, or I mean, you name it. I've had people tell me they're allergic to garlic. I'm like,
Get out of my kitchen.
I know, right?
You can't try anything
and you
I
have
make,
your
sorry.
vegetarians, your vegans, and your lacto vegan, and they're, you know, and it's just like, they just keep making up more stuff to follow, you know. So you really, especially when it comes to if you're working in like a hospital or something like that, that's when it is your job to be a doctor, basically. Like, you're a food doctor, you know. I mean, you really have a huge responsibility. You're responsible for people that are sick, people that have, you know, circumstances health-wise, have compromised immune systems, or they're young, which are also very perceptive to, you know, to sickness. This is, you know, they're consuming your product, you know, so you really have to be aware of all that stuff. But with this, you know, we want boiling water, salted like the sea, boiling every time. So if I do this, I take it out, I have to wait for it to boil again, and that's what I'm doing right now, is waiting for this to boil. Cook it to al dente, take it out, put it in a cold water bath, and that's called blanching. Take it out as soon as it's cold, because it'll actually, if you let it sit in there, it'll absorb all that liquid, and it'll, what I call waterlogged, it just gets waterlogged. So as soon as it's cold, take it out, dry it off, store it in a cold place, and then you reheat it, right? So that's the idea. This is for all chlorophyll vegetables: Brussels sprouts, green beans, green asparagus, sugar snap peas, you know, you name it. It just goes on and on. Anything green, this is how you do it, right? So you blanch all green vegetables. This will kind of cement the chlorophyll, bright chlorophyll color in it, and less likely for it to turn brown in the cooking process, right? The reason why you want lots of water to a little bit of veg is you don't want to cool down the water when you throw it in there, right? Because that will affect the process of the chlorophyll, you know, vibrant collection here. Along with, they secrete a bit of gas when they're cooked, and that gas gets in the water, and too much of it in a concentrated form, i.e. a small pot of water, can create a reaction with the chlorophyll and cause it to turn brown. So you can only blanch a few times with that water until you have to change it out to prevent the gases that exist in the water from turning your vegetable brown. So in the industry, we actually did this process to order. In the French room, we did it to order instead of pre-doing them. We did it to order, so we had a blanching pot, right? And then a heat, and then we wouldn't even cool it down. We'd go straight from the blanching pot into beurre monte, or into whatever it was we were cooking them in, you know, vegetable entremetier, you know, and that's how we did it. But actually, when I was on entremetier, we had two pots at all times, one that we were using and one that was coming up to a boil, or was at a simmer / almost boil for the next round. So every, you know, 15, 20, 30 minutes, you would take that pot of water, you dump it, use the fresh pot, turn it up to boil, and put it, and start filling up the next round. right? So you constantly have a fresh pot of water going at all times, you know. Entremetier in most cases in five-star restaurants is a station in itself, right? Vegetable cookery is a station in five-star restaurant. That's all you do is cook starches and vegetables. That's it, all day long. And you combine all your vegetables and starches with the other plates. So you come up with poissonnier, you feed them vegetables for poissonnier, which is the fish station. You feed the roastie station, which is all your meats, you know. You feed the app station if there's any vegetables on that. So you're the person that does all the vegetables and starches. That's how the Frenchmen work. Anyway, and that's how numerous restaurants have gone and higher end restaurants work. You know, and then you have some restaurants that are your saute, your grill, your fry, and you supply your own starch and veg for each station. That's another way it's set up. But your five-star is more focused. You do one thing, you know, a little bit more of a scientific approach to it, you know, instead of being posed with all these different techniques and tactics. In the middle of service, you got to split up a little bit better, right? So we're boiling here. We want to taste it, you know. Does it taste like salt? You know, taste it. See if it tastes like seawater, right? If it doesn't taste like the ocean, add more salt. Right? People make the mistake. Do we have more salt?
Yeah, it's underneath.
Okay.
It's in there. Oops, sorry.
If people make the mistake of doing this, people make the mistake of doing this to pasta water. That is wrong. Vegetables will absorb very little water from that. They will absorb, but very little, comparatively to pasta. Pasta triples in size from the time you take it, put it in there, and take it out. It's going to triple in size and volume because it soaks up triple, 2 times its size in liquid from what you boil it in, right? That's why you also need a big pot of water because it actually absorbs. If I had a pot like this and put 3 pounds in it or 4 pounds, there wouldn't be any water left. It'd turn into a big mass. No water left, right? So if you put water in that for pasta and you put that much salt in it, it's going to taste like a salt lick. Your pasta will, right? This is only for vegetables because they don't absorb as much. You need to have it heavily salted in order to have any kind of impact on the flavor of the vegetable. Does it make sense?
Yeah, sure.
I can put a straw in it.
You ever taste the ocean?
Super salty.
Unfortunately.
No.
Yes, there are sharks in there. You not swim in the ocean?
Swim in the
You don't
bay.
swim in the ocean?
That's another thing.
I've
you
never
know
been
about
to the
Black
beach.
people.
Trying to prove my point.
You know, y'all would dive off in there and be like,
Well, it's,
Yeah.
well, I'm a huge swimmer. I love to swim. I come from two lifeguards. My mom and dad are both lifeguards, so I'm like, it's in my blood to swim.
I love to swim too, but not in the ocean.
but I'm not finna
But
get
it's,
no.
I was trying to teach this
The bay is
gentleman
closer.
in the pool. I go to the Denton aquatic pool, and this guy was just kind of waiting in there, and he was a black man, and I was like, you know, you want me to help you? And he was like, oh yeah, and I was trying to teach him. He could
You
not.
almost killed you, didn't
No, he didn't kill
Oh,
me.
he
He was really being cool. Like, I was trying to teach him, but he could not for the life.
he? Man.
He couldn't. And I said, well,
I know you try to teach
I said,
people
I
how to
can't get on
float.
the dance floor and cut it up. I can.
Yeah, we can get to
I
that.
kind of joked around, like, so he looked like he was getting kind of frustrated. I said, you could probably dance a lot better than I could, you know. I said, this is a white man's dance. Right? In the pool. I said, we can swim. This is our dance. Right? He's just like,
Fight in the water.
yeah, you get into the on the dance floor, you're like, I'm gonna look like a flaring. But yeah, we all have our You know, it's probably because it's not taught. I guess that's what I was.
We had to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
But we learned, you know, they stood up in the pool and said, get out. That was probably child abuse. Y'all don't know that's how most black people learn how to swim. They said,
That's how my
come on, sunshine. Right. Come forward, Dad.
That's how my dad did. Do we have a string? Okay. That's how my dad did. He threw me off the boat.
Kicked you off.
Did you go to the ocean?
No, it was a lake.
Yeah, well, that's a big body. Wow.
5
That's
current.
hard.
I was very little.
At the Alamo.
He told me what to do and I did it. He told me how to ski. This was after I learned how to swim. But he taught me how to ski and he went through the whole steps. My dad's very literal and like he's an engineer, so he's black and white. But he didn't tell me to let go if I fell. They're all like, I was supposed to let go. I get lost in the water or something, you know.
You thought they'd slow down.
I'm like 4 foot deep in the water. I'm like, they will stop soon. I find my son's the same way. He's so literal. Like you tell him to do something, he does it exactly how you tell him.
How old are they, Chef?
My youngest that I was talking about, he's 12.
That's good in a way. Sometimes you kind of go in a way. Yeah, because if something happens, you still hold it. Don't let it go now. Yeah.
Look how bright green they're getting. Now they're colors
It's like they're radioactive.
Yeah.
boiling. It did bring it down for a minute, but that's okay. Not a minute, just for a second really. It just kind of brought it down and right back to a boil. So we're good. And I'm really going kind of slow on this because I find a lot of students come to catering and don't know how to use blanch. And it's like,
Come
it's
on.
scary. It's scary. You know? And I know it's been taught. It's just, if you don't pay attention, man, it's like, you know, it's the simple stuff that a chef is going to be like calling you out crazy on. You know, like, come on, what did you do in school? Learn how to blanch a vegetable properly. You know, it's scary stuff. You know? Be like a pastry chef, not know how to make ice cream, or anglaise, or whipped cream. And so,
I hope y'all know how to blanch vegetables. Yeah, right. Shut up. I'm just meddling.
Just we need we need some of that tape for you, huh? That's why you're asking.
Duct tape.
I tried to get one of butters that's already helping.
something mesmerizing about fire and boiling water.
We noticed. Chef. It's not a barn on fire, but it's the next best thing.
That was scary. No.
How do you know when they're done?
How do what?
When they're al dente.
How do you know when they're done?
The texture of them, if you'd like to feel one, it's hot.
From boiling water. Let me grab one out of the ice.
I mean, you can feel them cold too.
Yeah, I
They're
like
not
to feel
that-
them cold.
They're not quite the same cold. Just feel one, let's not all.
Does everyone grab a green bean?
You must not have any
What? My
true.
green means all, huh?
Tastes like
have any
ham.
feeling in your fingers.
My aunt that does.
Or it takes a little bit for the nerves to actually feel it.
Yeah.
So if you do it quick, it's kind of like walking on fire.
My aunt does that with like bubbling casserole. She'll just stick her finger in it to see if it's done.
Ow.
She'll grab
You
just
probably have
pans
no
out of
more
the oven.
fingerprints. Think about it. How,
No,
when
I
you
have
touch.
fingerprints. Unfortunately.
Now you can't set anymore. Clean up. Use your fingerprints. Oh, that's so true. Do you ever fish on the top of cakes when they're in the oven? Yeah. But if you think about it, you don't touch it for very long. That's true.
That's how it is if you dip your finger in like grease when it's hot. Like it's so hot you can't feel it.
Oh,
until,
it
like,
just
after.
burns. I don't do that.
I did it once on accident. I was doing French fries. Did it